Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming back in this morning. We're looking forward to a good day. I have great pleasure in introducing our first speaker this morning, Mitch. Mitch has come to us highly recommended from a number of people in the US as being a progressive animal management manager who really believes strongly in trying to reduce the numbers of animals coming into pounds and shelters, and has worked closely with animal welfare in his particular area. But I'll leave it up to Mitch to explain all about what he's been doing, and I'm really looking forward to it too. Thanks very much, Mitch.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to speak here. Australia was always on my bucket list of places to visit, so I was thrilled when I was asked to speak here. Let me talk a little bit about the agency that I am the head of, and I'll ask you to excuse me. Let me know if I use a word you don't understand, because I know you folks use words I don't understand. I know we're all speaking English, but at times it's confusing. But yeah, love that Aussie accent too. But it can make it challenging when we're communicating. Lift, oh, a lift, oh, an elevator, oh, okay. So anyhow, the community I'm from is in Nevada. Many of you are probably familiar with Las Vegas, Nevada. We're on the other end of Nevada, and it's Reno, Nevada area, and it's Washoe County. It's a regional animal control program, meaning it's the entire county plus 2 incorporated cities within the jurisdiction. And that consolidation happened in 2005. It wasn't always a consolidated facility. Each city had their own program. I was also head of an animal control program back in Minnesota. You probably don't know where Minnesota is, but it's the northern area of the states, in the middle of the country, and has horrible winters, so I left. 70 below wind chill is not fun, especially if you're working outside and dealing with animals. So I left there. For this presentation today, I wanted to talk a little bit about animal control and the background of it, and the progression of animal control, and try to give you a view of where animal comes from, so as many of you, and I'm assuming most of you, are part of the animal welfare movement, correct? Raise a hand, animal welfare. Okay, raise your hand if you're in the animal control profession. Okay, more than I would have thought. Good. And so I oftentimes find when I'm speaking is that the animal welfare people have a hard time understanding the animal control people, and vice versa. Historically in our country, and I'm going to guess it's the same here because human nature is human nature, you get an us and them kind of thing. And historically in our country, humane societies, animal welfare wore the white hat, animal control wore the black hat, and that created a greater divide in itself. So I'll bounce around a lot, speaking of past philosophy, differences, some business thinking, and not a lot of touchy-feely in mine. I recently did a personality typing thing. Myers-Briggs personality typing is pretty well respected in the United States, and I scored a 0 on feelings. So the instructor said I actually have feelings, I just don't use them when I'm doing things. Okay. So, but I think the Marine Corps beat feelings out of me. So that or the 2 ex-wives, I'm not sure. So let's get started. First, why does government perform animal control? It's a public safety function. Just like law enforcement, fire, paramedics, hospitals, it's a public safety thing. You have dogs in traffic, they cause accidents, we've had people killed because of it. You have aggressive dogs, the more common one we deal with. I know in our community we respond to over 1,000 aggressive dog calls every year out of the 30-some thousand calls for service we respond to. And then there's the other unpleasant tasks, someone has to deal with the unwanted animals, the abandoned ones. Now, I believe Australia has probably more of a feral dog problem than we do. In the United States, not too common. Feral cats, yes. Feral dogs, not so much. But every now and then we run into those. For the most part, we're dealing with people's pets, and those people have abandoned their animal, okay? They've lost it and decided not to look for it. That's one form of abandonment. Or they flat out, here, I don't want it anymore. Either way, it's abandonment to me. So government has to figure out how they're going to pay for it. And in the United States, typically they've modeled it after what we call parking enforcement tow truck type business model, wherein government didn't really want to pay for this. They had to do it for public safety reasons. And back in the old West days of the United States, they would, the Wild West, they would just pay somebody to take a dog out and shoot it. And so that's kind of where it took its roots in our country. And then they had to have a more organized, better way of doing it as the country grew. And they had to come up with some way of paying for it, but they didn't really want to pay for it out of the regular tax money. So it's like, well, if you pick up the dog, the owner pays for the cost, and if not, shoot it. And so the problem is that business model doesn't really take into account that a vehicle has salvage value at minimum, but likely is worth tens of thousands of dollars, and a person's going to pay to get that back. That's not always the case with a dog. Actually, it's seldom the case with a dog. The type of dogs we tend to get in animal control are the mixed breeds, the pit bulls, dime a dozen type dogs, and therefore using that approach, holding it ransom, like you would the Mercedes, isn't going to be a real smart business move. You're going to get that thing abandoned, and now you have no salvage value either, so now you have additional costs of not only did you have to hold it, waiting for an owner to come and claim it or abandon it. In our area, it's 5-day hold. Some areas of the country in the United States are only 3 days. That tends to be the minimum. And there's a few areas that have to hold it 7 days. The cost of sheltering and holding that animal is increasing the government's cost. It is then not collected, and then it's further compounded by the fact that the person abandons it, and if you can't get a rescue to help you take it off your hands, then the government's stuck with the cost of euthanasia and the disposal of the remains. The cost of euthanasia has gone up considerably in our country. We went from, again, shooting them to having gas chambers to sodium pen. Now, in our country, for the most part, almost every community requires that you use certified euthanasia technicians that are trained to do it properly, and it's costly from a staff perspective. So I'm giving you this background on this so that you fully understand the rest of the things I'll tell you and why we made this switch in our business model. All right? Anyhow, the other tow truck industry things, while there are some people who are in love with their cars, most people aren't emotionally attached to them the way they would be with an animal. And that business model does not take into account the changing values of society and how people feel about their animals. My background pre-animal control was as a professional dog trainer. One of the things I learned from working with thousands of people in helping them train their dog is that human-animal bond connection. You get to truly, truly understand and see when you're working with somebody for weeks on end with them and their dog, much like a teacher with a parent and a child, you learn to understand and recognize how strong that emotional bond is and how people feel about their animals. I understood that 30 years ago when I was training dogs, and I've watched that increase dramatically 100-fold in the way people feel about their animals. So there has been a real evolution and a change in society's values and their feelings towards their pets. I think most people, 80, 90%, think of their animals as a family member and not just as a animal, dog kind of personal property. So in the typical animal control organization in our country, thousands of animals will be euthanized every year. They'll have a couple full-time staff members euthanizing. Again, they have to use the sodium pen. It usually takes 2 staff members, one for holding and another one for injecting. They'll fill up a freezer and buckets and 55-gallon drums with dead carcasses, and the renderer will come or they will cremate them. And there's a lot of staff burnout. Not many people want to do that kind of work for very long. Most people will tell you that they start having nightmares after the first year or the second year. Very unpleasant for the people who have to do it. So we have a lot of motivation to do it differently. And from my perspective as the head of my agency, the last thing I want is my people doing that unless it's absolutely necessary. So what we have in our society is a great divide between people who are focused on public safety and then people who are focused on saving the animals. One is a non-feeling kind of function, and the other one is a completely feeling side, emotional side of the brain function. And in public safety, because you're dealing with people who become aggressive and agitated, angry, and we teach our people to shut down emotionally all the time. Don't respond. It's not about you. It's the uniform. It's what you're doing. You have to take enforcement action, and they're mad. And I know I had one officer, citizen called and started calling her an effing this and an effing that, and you understand effing, right? Okay. And poor Rosie, she's a good German lady, and she says, she's just heartbroken, she's angry, you know. And I said, Rosie, it wasn't about you, it wasn't personal. Yes, it was, he called me an effing blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, but it's not personal. Whoever answered that phone was going to get that. So we teach our people to shut emotions down. And on the other hand, those that are in the business of saving animals are pumping their emotions up. And that's what inspires you and motivates you and why you do what you do. And but it does create a great divide between us. And then historically, I know this from many personal experiences, the humane movement people, humane societies, and welfare people, perfectly natural to be proud of what you do, and then say things or do things that, and sometimes the dog catchers deserve this, and I've gone after dog catchers. Everybody else see Lady and the Tramp when they were a kid? The movie, Walt Disney? Okay, that dog catcher scared the hell out of me when I was a little kid, and I've always hated that image. So I've worked hard for 30 years to try to change that image, and many others have as well. And I think we're finally in our country getting to a point where people look at animal control officers very differently in many communities now. Not all. No, there's no way that we're all there yet. But I was just telling someone at coffee this morning that I had an experience as an officer standing in the restaurant, and some lady notices I'm in a uniform, and she kind of steps away and kind of like this. And then after a minute or two while we're still waiting to get seated, she kind of looks back and sees my patch, and it says Animal Control Officer. She goes, oh, you're one of the good guys. So if I had been a regular cop, I was a bad guy. But you're seeing that evolution in society more and more in our country, where you see all the animal cop shows, and they start to realize that the animal control officer isn't the bad guy. The animal control officer is usually cleaning up the bad situation that some other person created. But in far too many communities, we still have what I call dog catcher mentalities, and we'll talk more about that. But to get back on society's changing values, in our country we've changed the euthanasia laws. You have to use sodium pen, a far more humane way of doing that. However, still very strong human involvement in that procedure, and very hard on staff. FEMA, our Federal Emergency Management Administration, does all the disaster stuff, has mandated, and President Bush signed into law in our country, that you have to have pets included in your disaster preparedness plans in our country. So we learned that one from Katrina. And it's not just about saving the animals, it's about recognizing people's changing values of their pets. Too many people refuse to be evacuated and leave without their pet. I know I'm not leaving without mine. And although there's times I want to kill him myself, I rescued this new shepherd. I'll show you a video if you want to see it, but he's the most charming dog, but the most infuriating dog at the same time. So you go from love, hate, back and forth. Nevada, a few years back, followed suit and said, you must assist without limitation. Okay, freaked me out. Budgetarily, that freaks me out. Okay, we don't have helicopters. We can't do, major rescues. But basically, it's a very strong statement in a state law to say that you must assist without limitation, meaning we got to help them just like we would a person. And that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. It just scares you from a management and how am I going to do that kind of thing. So we cross-trained all of our sheriff's department people and did all kinds of stuff to increase our ability and capacity to help. So then recently I was at a disaster training seminar, and the senior deputy attorney general for the state of Nevada was talking about different legal statuses. And one of them is property or chattel, the legal term in our country, and that would be that dogs fit into that category, or pets do. He actually sees a time in the near future when there will be a separate classification for pets, other than just property. Won't get into all the challenges that would present, but it all these things go to tell you how much society is changing in their values and their expectations regarding their pets. I always liken it to the DUI laws. I'm assuming in this country it's bad to drive and drink and drive, right? Okay, pretty bad in Minnesota too. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, MAD, all these groups came along, kind of like no-kill movement and things of this nature. And I remember in my youth, pretty much if the cops stopped you for drinking, they just kind of take your keys and give you a ride home. Okay, not so much anymore. They're not quite that friendly. Now you're going straight to jail. So even if you're just a fraction over 0.8, you're going to jail. And so that's a reflection of society's changing values and concerns about things. So we're seeing the same thing in animals now. A couple of decades past the drinking change. And so the no-kill movement is getting a lot of steam in our country, and don't know how strong it is here yet. I know if I go to an animal control conference, they have a National Animal Control Association just had their annual conference, and they had a hard time getting people to it. The welfare people, I lovingly refer to them as the wackos. I'm a closet wacko, so I can do that. No, somebody said, how do we get animal control to quit calling us wackos? So I fell in love with the term. And but the wacko conference fills out in 30 days 500 people. It's like, okay, the wackos got all the money. So those of you in animal control, keep this in mind. The wackos got the money, okay? You want to get along with these people. So, okay, so we've got a lot of changes in society and the way people view things, and government's always slow to respond to society's changes. They really are. People change, government just keeps doing the same thing over and over. It doesn't get it. It's because it's big. And so government is now struggling with some really serious economical changes. Not so much in Australia. Your dollar is very expensive. I found that out. And but no, your economy is doing very well. I think the Australian dollar is probably the #1 dollar out there. and sure is pretty. Love all the colors on it compared to ours. And trying to get used to those coins, though. And and government needs public support more than ever because everybody's questioning government on so many levels. So they need to be more cost effective, and in order to do that, they've got to start thinking like a private business does. And we're getting a lot of speakers that come in to our local government and doing presentations on this stuff, so I'm involved in that and seeing how government's trying to reinvent itself, so to speak, and get away from the traditional government image and rethinking what services they need to provide and what services should be outsourced. And in our country, a lot of humane societies have animal control contracts. And so in business, you have acquisitions and mergers, and in government, you get collaboration and partnerships. We are actually in a contractual partnership with the Nevada Humane Society. My side of and we're in the same building. My side of the building, we work on public safety issues, law enforcement. And on the other side, they're doing the adoption, rehoming, and accepting the owner surrenders. We're dealing with the strays. They're dealing with the owned animals. And it's proving to work quite well. For animal control, collaboration and thinking more like a business involves working with the feral cat programs, the humane societies, the rescue groups. We have a lot of even just small mom and pop breed-specific rescues that we work with that are registered with us and take animals. Everyone we can save is a good thing. Everyone we can save the cost of euthanasia disposal on is a good thing. It really creates a win-win relationship for everybody. So the real change really for us began with the no-kill movement when the Nevada Humane Society, who was our partner, they brought in Bonnie Brown, and she's a great lady, one of my heroes. And this lady can market like you wouldn't believe. She's getting out 10,000 dogs, another 5,000 cats, rehomed every year. And I might be a little high in those numbers, but I'm not off by much. 6,000 or 7,000 dogs, 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 cats. It's a tremendous accomplishment. And I really, and I'll tell the animal control folks, I don't like the term kill. I'm used to the term euthanasia or snuff. But no, just kidding. I joke a lot. But no, I'm not that sensitive. My mother taught me sticks and stones will break my bones. Names will never hurt me, she said. So I got over semantics and the terms. But, you know, historically, kill kind of has a bad name because we get called the killers. When I was in Marine Corps, we were told we were underpaid and oversexed baby killers, you know. So, you know, okay, I got over that too. But if you look beyond that initial resentment that, at least in our country, animal control has with the term kill, because if you're the one doing it, it seems kind of like harsh. And so a softer term like euthanasia, but I understand the wacko side of it, where it's like, well, yeah, but you actually are killing. You're making it sound like it's not so bad. You know, so there's two sides to that, and we need to respect each other's feelings in regard to that. I didn't really think it would work in Reno, Washoe County, Nevada, gambling town. It's like Las Vegas, a casino town primarily. Rather transient. Right now we have the highest, our unemployment's running over 13%, foreclosure rates, some of the highest in the nation. And so between the unemployment, the foreclosure rates, the transient nature of a casino town, I didn't think it would work here. I really thought it could work in a more affluent community, but they proved me wrong. So I had to do some math and rethink things in terms of how animal control sees its world. Again, government is slow to change typically. We're pretty indoctrinated by codes, long-lasting laws and policies and regulations, and we succumb to all of that, and it's very hard to think outside the box. So I opened my mind and said, okay, let's do some math on this thing, and bottom line is things couldn't be any worse, so let's support them and give it a try. And if we did, we could save a lot of money on euthanasia disposal costs. We could reduce staff burnout. That also saves money because when you lose someone, you got to retrain someone, go through the whole hiring process. Oh, in our county, it's a nightmare to hire someone. So very time-consuming, and it could likely improve our image within the community, from dog catcher to animal control officer, a more professional image. Certainly supported that. And we could probably make a couple animals happy along the way. And you notice that was last, right? I'm animal control, no feelings. So all I had to do was think outside the box, check my traditional thinking. And that happened quite a bit, where they would say they're going to do something. I go, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Wait a minute, really? Okay, let me think about it. And then I'd, back off. And as I did more and more, the easier it got to do that, to check myself. And then pretty soon I wasn't tied to all these beliefs that were just rooted in tradition rather than fact. Like if you get a dog for free, the person won't take care of it like the person who paid $400 for it. That's not true. So anyhow, I wouldn't give it to a homeless person, although I know some homeless people who are very dedicated to their animals. So tried to think more like a business person, look at the value of things in terms of economic value to our facility and the shelter. And so started to look at how we could work with that. I already had always believed in return to owner in the nearly 30 years I've been doing this. And so it was a matter of what can I do to increase this? So microchipping campaigns, licensing campaigns. Licensing's better, makes us more money, but either one worked for me. Anything that would get this animal home and keep them from coming in. If I can reduce the intake, I can reduce the abandonment, and I can reduce the work the Humane Society has to do. So we all started to see how each other plays a role in helping the other person be successful in their mission. Our missions were different, but we had a commonality in our missions, and it was recognizing that and focusing on that. They're over there, we're over here writing tickets, and they're over on their side, and they've got Valentine stuff up and cute flowers and hearts and fluffy stuff, and we're over here with court documents and court orders and seizure orders and doing that. And so very different worlds in a way, but there was that commonality. And I tried to, even some of my own government officials, I think, struggle with this, because we even have citizens, which is really kind of strange, that have issues with some of this no-kill stuff. And so I think it's like a political battle now. And so I'm trying to convince them that, think of it like if you have your garbage. Now, in the United States, Waste Management is a big company. Do you have Waste Management down here? They could be worldwide by now. They're going to take over the world. Who would ever thought the garbage men would take over the world? So, anyhow, so Waste Management charges you a fortune to take away your garbage. If someone came along and say, I'll recycle that, and I won't charge you a thing. Take all your garbage, I'll recycle it, won't charge you anything. Isn't that basically what the wackos are telling us they want to do? Yet in animal control government, we're going, oh no, they're our animals, you can't have them. We're going to spend money euthanizing and disposing of them. Makes no sense. But we see it over and over and over again in our country. I don't know if that's true here. I'm just telling you this is what's happening in our country. And my predecessor, those are our animals. I think we're just government, we're just the guardians, and we're supposed to do the right thing by them, And so if you have that problem here, get over it, folks. Government doesn't own animals. Government doesn't want to own animals. They never got into the business of wanting to own animals. They just need to do the right thing and the most economical thing, which is give them to the wackos. Let them recycle them, and everybody wins. And so we worked on stepping up the return to owners. So somehow I got coined the king of redemptions and return to owners and that kind of thing. But the whole team got on board with this and really enjoys it. I had an officer, that same German officer I told you about before, comes into my office one day, and I struggle with my staff trying to get them to change their thinking. You're not a dog catcher, you're an animal control officer. Your job is to investigate, get this dog back home where it belongs, and that's a win-win for everybody. If it's a problem, spank them with a ticket, all right? They'll pay the fine, but we're not going to hold the animal ransom to punish them. So as I got this through to them, so one day I knew I'd kind of made it. When the officer comes to me and says, well, you'd be proud of me today. And I said, why would I be proud of you? She goes, I impounded 6 dogs. And I said, why would that make me happy? She goes, because I got 5 of them back home to their owners. And so then I knew I'd turned the corner with some of the staff when I got that reaction. And she was quite proud of herself, you know. And you could see she was pleased. And what the officer started to realize is that by using this approach, they were getting a lot of positive feedback from the citizens. And that reinforced it as well. But we now have thousands of animals that don't come into our facility at all. They go straight home. When I first came to Reno as an officer, there's a couple officers said, Mitch, we like you, but you got to quit doing that or you're going to get fired. And I said, quit doing what? Giving the animals back to their owners. I go, what? You're going to fire me for that? So I fought to get that policy changed. So because it was something I had done my whole career and elsewhere. So rehome abandoned animals, that's the other side of this. And this is where we put pressure on the humane groups. And so we want to work with them. We increase our return to owners. They work hard to increase their rehoming. Pretty soon, voila, our euthanasia rate goes from thousands to a few hundred. And of those are animals that are not what are classified by Maddie's Fund categories to be perfectly adoptable, healthy, medically sound animals. Now, for those who may not be aware of it, no-kill does not mean you don't kill anything. You're still going to have to euthanize animals that are a public safety threat. You cannot put a dangerous dog back out on the streets. For those who have not spent any time or a lot of time in training and behavior of dogs or in animal control to have learned this, because I know the Humane Society struggles with their people, their volunteers, and some of their staff when they have to decide to euthanize an animal. A dog who is dog aggressive is a public safety threat. Anyone in animal control will tell you that a huge percentage of the dog bites to humans occur as a result of dogs fighting. Okay, my worst dog bite was between my 2 dogs fighting. I know this from personal experience. Now 5 minutes later, they're licking each other and kissing each other. Best friends all over again. Sorry about the food fight. And I'm bleeding with a big hole in my arm. But that's fine when it's in family. The shepherd I just rescued that I told you is a darling, Mr. Charming, Ninja is his name. All the rescues refuse to take him because he's dog aggressive, and rightfully so. He's alive, living well. He no longer wants to kill the Rottweiler that also lives in the house, and they're best buddies. But not every person is a professional dog trainer. So since you're limited, they'd like me to take all these dogs, but I obviously can't do that either. It's not that the animal is bad and couldn't, in a perfect world, be safe. We, as people trying to rehome animals, the average citizen doesn't have that skill level and knowledge, okay, or necessarily willing to make that type of a commitment. So when we're talking no-kill, we're talking perfectly medically and behaviorally sound animals. Oftentimes I hear people in animal control say, oh, well, no-kill, it's bad because you're putting dangerous dogs back out on the street. But that's not what no-kill means, at least not in our country in the context that Maddie's Fund and no-kill movement use it. All right. Someday, who knows, maybe there'll be places for animals that are unsafe to put back out in society. But anyhow, so reality check, folks. Okay. Dogs have a mind of their own. They got 4 legs, and they can outrun most of us. I know at my age they can definitely outrun me. And so, in thinking of how we should be doing business, and this is important because if you're going to ever approach government in your area and politicians regarding changing the way things are done, and I know I've done that in other communities, I always like to explain the reality and then talk business with them. So the reality is government needs to give better public service. Well, they don't do that by holding your pets ransom. So, and if you understand that every dog owner has the challenge of keeping their animals from getting loose, okay, and everybody in animal control needs to understand that everybody's dog who gets loose isn't a felon, okay, it happens in the best of homes. It's happened to me with dogs that I've rescued or owned. And sometimes you see why they were in the shelter to begin with, you know, little escape artists. So the recidivism rate sometimes is high on rescue dogs. So what do you want done when your dog gets picked up? Don't you want him just brought back home? Now, for government, that makes sense, okay? If your child got lost, I don't think the cops are going to whisk them off to a jail somewhere. I think they're going to try to find you, right? So now average citizens got to help by putting ID on the animal. Very hard to get them back home when there's nothing there. I've beaten a few dogs, and they never tell me where they live. So, okay. Oh, I want to get back to the dog owner bites dog catcher. Minneapolis is a pretty big city in Minnesota. The Twin Cities, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it's a couple million people, and so one day reading the Sunday paper, and there it is, one of the big sections, dog owner bites dog catcher. So the animal control officer picks the dog up, a lady comes running up to him and says, "Hey, that's my dog, that's my dog." Now obviously she cares, she wouldn't have been out looking for him. He refuses to give her the dog, says, "No, I got to take it into the shelter." So she proceeds to bite him to get the dog back. So that's the headline. This is not the kind of headline that really helps professionalize our work. So I always vowed that that would never happen to me, and frankly, I would have bit him too. So you pick up my dog, you better give him back to me because I'm going to hurt you. And so we need to assume that it's an accident, and as one sergeant told me years ago, shit happens. So that was after I ran into a fire hydrant with the vehicle. Okay. What happens when you impound an animal? Okay. The dog owner gets mad as hell. This is not good for public service and public support. So he's mad at the dog initially. Now you impound him, and now he's mad at you. And so he's mad at you, he's mad at the dog. He's probably going to have to miss some work, come down and bail him out. It's going to cost him money. You've just done everything you can to make him be unsatisfied with government and to hate his dog and to want to abandon it. I call it falling out of love with your animal. It's kind of like human relationships. You start dating a guy, pretty soon he's drinking, he's fooling around. Okay, maybe this dog keeps escaping, chewing stuff in the house, he's having issues with housebreaking, all the classic behavioral issues that we all struggle with our pets at some point or another. And now here's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So you impound him instead of bring him back to him, and there's a pretty good chance he's going to abandon him. I know this because in most communities in the United States, abandonment rate runs about 70, 80%, somewhere in that. Even in our community, it's 50%. So being a serious gambler, poker player. I've already played Texas Hold'em here a couple times. First night. I know that the odds are bad if you impound this animal. Bad meaning there's a good chance the taxpayer is going to eat the cost of this. Okay, so as a businessman, it's a bad proposition. I don't want this animal coming into my facility if I can avoid it. I don't want to do anything to encourage him to abandon his animal. Every animal control officer has heard over and over and over again from people, well, next time, just keep them. You know, people get frustrated, and they fall out of love with their pets, just like you fall out of love with your significant other when they keep drinking and fooling around on you. So bad behavior usually makes us fall out of love. So we need to minimize that, and we can help minimize abandonment. We can then help minimize the effect on our partnership and the work the Humane Society has to do. So where does all the frustration go? Okay, abandonment and a dislike for animal control and government. Politicians don't like that. They don't want their citizens pissed off at them. So return to owners is good business, it's good PR, it's simply the right thing to do, and it reduces the pressure on the rescue groups. So the alternative is that you build bigger and bigger and bigger facilities at the cost of millions of dollars. Even the cops now and the jails are now taking the approach, we're only arresting you if we absolutely have to. Otherwise, we're going to give you a citation and let you go about your business, okay? Because they're filling up all our jails. Then we got to build more jails. Are your jails full here? Or are you guys all law-abiding people? Ours are full, okay? And we again, government's broke. We can't afford to build new ones. So most animal control facilities are old dumps. I know our last one was. So return to owner is a much more successful animal control model. It reduces costs. Again, saves millions on facilities. It reduces shelter operational costs in terms of staff, food, treatment, on and on. It reduces the risk associated with impounding the animals, such as my dog gets picked up and now he's in here with animals with kennel cough, parvo, who knows what, right? I mean, this is where strays are at. We don't know the vaccination history and health of these animals, and no matter how clean your facility is, some of these things are hard to control in a shelter environment when you have thousands of animals coming through the doors. You can reduce the risk to staff in terms of the fewer animals to handle, the less bites and workers' comp claims you'll have. And again, you reduce the abandonment, you reduce all of the euthanasia and disposal costs and burnout costs to staff. So it starts in the field, and you think in terms of virtual shelter. What if I didn't have a shelter? What if I just had my truck? I got 6 compartments, equipment in 2 of those, so I need to get these animals home. And that's the approach we take. And it enhances everything. Officers feel better, citizens feel better, taxpayer, the abandonment is down, our partner who does the rehoming has less animals to rehome, so it's a win for them too. So the officer has to do everything in their power to get this animal home. It is not pick it up and impound it is not the goal. The goal is, and you hear in some communities, officers bragging about how many animals they scarfed up, like that's a good thing. Yeah, getting them up and getting them home, if you're giving me that number, then I'm impressed. So they're taught, you check every phone number, you scan them for microchips. So all the officers have scanners. They have a computer in their vehicle which has full database access to Chameleon, the software program we use. Every officer has a digital camera. This stuff is cheap, folks, okay, to give them. They photograph the animal and upload the picture. It immediately populates on the internet and our website and in our lobby on the monitors we have in our lobby, so that citizens, when they come in, don't have to wander the whole facility. They can just stand there and look at the pictures as they're recycling or they're cycling through, and see if their animal's here, and then go exactly to that kennel or that cat cage, and they can see if it's on the truck. So then we can call the officer and say, yeah, that owner's already here looking for it, blah, 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 because that officer might take 4 hours to come in and unload those animals, depending on what their jurisdiction and area of concern is. They check all loss reports right there on their computer, and they also are taught to check with the area residents. Just because this person says, this is how some people get caught, just because this person who finds a dog calls up and says, yeah, we call it a contained dog, respond out there, and the lady goes, yeah, no, I have no idea where it lives, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean that Joe down the street doesn't. So if they see someone out, they might knock on another door or two. One lady got caught trying to turn her own dog in as a stray. And the officer checked with 2 other neighbors. They both said, yeah, the dog lives right there, the lady who turned it in as a stray. And so the officer went back and said, ma'am, this is your dog, and if you ever do that again, we'll cite you for giving false information. So, if you don't want your animal, here's the number for the Humane Society. They handle owned animals. We only deal with the strays, and try to get them back to their owners. And so illegal to abandon the animal like that. And it should be. I don't know if it's that way here, but it is for us. They also leave a notice on anybody's door that if they think this person might. Sometimes neighbors say, well, it might live there, or that house. They'll put up notices. So they're going to do everything they can. Also, too, unless there's a safety reason, if the gate's open and it's obvious a dog got out through the gate, officers are told, put the animal back in, close the gate, and leave a note, a notice. And we'll deal with it later. But, again, don't impound it if you don't have to. And I've had people say, well, hey, he's out of town, he's a truck driver, he'll be back tomorrow, but we're good friends, I'll take the dog and hold it. Oh, okay, here you go. Got to be a little careful there. There's some liability. Well, I wouldn't give it to a little kid or something. Okay, now, in spite of everything you do as an officer out there, you're going to have the occasional arrest, okay? And that's where we rescan them, we photograph, upload the photos there. If the officer couldn't do it in the field for some reason, maybe it was a fractious dog and they couldn't safely photograph them. And so we're going to go through all the ID and stuff. We're going to put them in a special section if they have ID. Matter of fact, I love technology. I'm getting software that's going to allow us to just have a message that we can just enter the phone number. Staff will just enter the phone number in, and the automatic caller will automatically call them and tell them until they answer, your dog is here. So you know how you get those marketing ones, telemarketing, right? Well, we're going to use this for good instead of evil. And so we'll hold the animal longer because last thing I want to find out is that some pet sitter screwed up, didn't tell us, and this animal is now euthanized because the people were in Europe for 2 weeks and we only hold them 5 days. No, if it's got ID, we're holding it until we positively prove that owner doesn't exist anymore. They've moved out of the country and abandoned the animal or something. We will not ever euthanize an animal with ID until we can prove that owner no longer wants that animal. And one of the other things is billing, okay? We provide billing, which is something new. Think about it. You're animal control, you got this dog, and this person comes in. This happens to us all the time. Well, what's the impound fee and the board charges? $50, whatever, $70, $100. And, well, I don't have that much money. Okay. Now we're kind of, government's between a rock and a hard place here. What do? This person cost all you taxpayers this money. You're the one that paid for the officer and the vehicle and all that time and all the sheltering of this animal. Now this person's saying, well, I don't have the money. Okay. Well, rather than kill the animal, because he's broke, we will bill them. Then we have our collections department go after them. Now, we'll send them a couple notices, and if they don't pay us, we'll give it to collections. Collections will turn around and send them a nasty hate mail. It'll hate email or hate mail, and they'll tell them, we're taking you to court to get this money. And then you occasionally get a phone call, like the one lady wouldn't quit harassing my staff, so they said, well, you take the call. So I get on there, and the lady says, I forget why she thought she shouldn't pay it, but she acknowledged she owed it, but didn't want to pay it. And I just said, listen, you owe this to the taxpayers. You cost the taxpayers this money, and you need to pay it, or collections is going to go after you. In the end, she ended up calling me an MF, cold, heartless B. I can't say all those words to you. And so you occasionally get some hate phone calls and those are the people who just can't take responsibility for anything. And but she, was given a service, and she agreed to pay the bill and didn't want to pay it. So you're going to have some, frustrations with that. Those that'll never pay it. But why would you, as government, from a business perspective, want to put more money into this animal by keeping it longer? Because here's the dilemma you get put into. So the person says, well, I get paid on Friday. Okay, we'll come back Friday with the money. Well, now you're waiting 2 or 3 more days and praying he really shows up, because you're putting more money into this animal by holding it longer, and then they don't show up. They don't show up on Friday. Well, now you're thinking, well, geez, if I euthanize it tomorrow and he shows up, my God, he'll come down with a gun and shoot us all. He's going to be mad. So now you hold him a couple more days longer just to be certain he's not coming back, and then you euthanize it and you dispose of it. Well, think of all the money you put into this animal. If you'd have just given it to him when he came in and give him a bill, like a water bill or a sewer bill or any other bill government gives, that should work, right? And if he really doesn't have it, then you can't. Putting more money into killing the animal isn't the solution, okay? Minimize your losses, cut your losses, move on. Just like we do with credit card debt that doesn't get paid, and they move on, Cost of doing business. So, and why should the animal suffer because they got a deadbeat owner, And, okay, so some of the other benefits is great public relations with the citizen. We recently, Tom, maybe on another slide here, but I already mentioned the dog owner bites dog catcher. That's not going to ever happen to us in our papers. The officers receive tremendous positive feedback from the community. Nice when they go, oh, you're the good guys. That's a nice feeling. So I think we touched on quite a bit of this already. This letter I love, though. The dog had gotten loose and been up to you guys have 7-Elevens too, so you understand. So he was up to the 7-Eleven convenience store, and fortunately she had filled out a loss report, and that the citizen who found it called us. We went there, we looked, loss report, took it back home, and I just liked the way she says, but he is very tired and hungry and is getting a microchip and a license when he wakes up. Thank you so much. You are all truly great and do great things. Thank you with all my heart. It was a quick little note that in that last sentence or two really said how people feel when you do it the right way in our business. You don't have to be the bad guy. You don't have to be the Walt Disney dog catcher in our profession to be doing the right thing by people, by the pet, and by the economics of running a program. This person wasn't the person. I just tagged this on to remind you. We just bought a $160,000 animal rescue team command center from a bequest given to animal control. Okay, someone left that to us in their will. And if you're not doing things the right way, then you don't get those benefits. So, and then even on our website, when they license, people are constantly leaving a couple dollars extra in donations, so we get thousands of dollars a year in donations from the public. And most government entities can't say that. So along the lines of thinking like a business, you've got to be marketing. Marketing is very important in business. So we need to educate the people about the importance of identification. No matter how much we beat the dog, he's not going to tell us where he lives. You have to put identification on him. You've got to beat that into people's heads. It's amazing how many times. I took one home the other day that was just loose on our street, and a shepherd, and I thought, well, I'm not going to call animal control. I'll just, they're not responding to the voice message. So I looked and went, oh, here's another tag with an address on it. So I walk it down the street, and I said to her, I said, why didn't you call? Oh, that's my ex-husband's phone number. So old identification makes it very challenging. And I said, well, get the correct number on there. And you got to promote your website, and you need to promote the value of the dog license. In many animal control programs, they don't give a value for it. It's, oh, you're supposed to license your dog, period. End of story. Well, does it do me any good? Well, no. But you're supposed to do it, So we promote it as your dog's ticket home. I did such a good job in Minnesota with that I started having cat owners, which weren't required to have a license, demanding to buy a license. And I said, well, we don't license cats, ma'am. Well, why should the dogs get a ride home and not the cats? So, okay, I'll sell you a dog license for your cat, okay? And but people really want to do the right thing if they see there's a value. I mean, otherwise, why should I do it? Got to have some value. We talked about the billing, getting them back home. It just doesn't make sense to put more money into an animal. Okay, feral cat problem. Okay. Oh, I got to finish up real fast. Okay. All right. Even our National Animal Control Association is finally made the switch to promoting trap, neuter, return as the most effective and cost-effective way to address the feral cat problem in the communities. I don't know how bad your problem is here, but with your temperate climate, I'm going to guess it's bad. So in Minnesota, when I was there, we didn't have a problem. And I know I talked to Bill Bruce in Canada. He doesn't have a problem. 70 below wind chills takes care of the problem. So they just don't survive. You want to make sure that your regulations, your codes, your laws are in harmony with the philosophy and mission that your community has, okay? And success is a result of a willingness to embrace continuous process improvement, and it requires continuous change and learning. John F. Kennedy, one of our famous presidents, said change is a law of life. And it requires that you understand that you cannot solve the problem with the same thinking that created the problem. And if you keep doing the same thing, you'll get a different outcome. You need to be able to play well with others, even when you aren't in agreement with others. You have to be able to agree to disagree. If you have to resolve every concern before you do something, you're likely to do nothing. And you must have a sense of humor. I like the wackos. They have a great sense of humor. And some of the challenges of change, these are things that I've come across just in my own personal experience with staff. Well, we've always done it this way. I don't know if you can tell me how that ever justifies anything. We've always done it this way. That it means nothing. And so I did tell a sergeant one day, I said, you say it to me again, I'll rip your throat out. So anyhow, he was ex-Army, I'm ex-Marine. We talk like that all the time to each other. Anyhow, and then I had another officer come in more recently, and she goes, every day I come in here, something's changed. I said, yeah, but we're changing things to make them better. I said, I realize you came in wanting to just no-brainer it today, have your coffee, and just have a nice, easy, smooth day and not have to learn anything today, but that really isn't what we're paying you to do. So I chatted with her a little bit, and she goes, no, you're right, I know. I'm just being lazy. So human nature, though, and we all have days like that. And as far as the truth, I find that I get ridicule and violent opposition. They go to the union, they go to upper management over every change I make, and then finally they accept it as the norm and as the obvious. You have to have transparency. You can't manage what you can't measure, and the public has a right to know what the problem is, and they can't fix it if they don't know. That is a picture of our facility. Okay. Those are some internal pictures. Most animal control agencies do not have this. This was built because of transparency and collaboration in our community. And I encourage those in animal control to think in terms of working with the wackos. Okay, they're really good people. You won't agree on everything with them, but there is too much that you all have in common, and I encourage the wackos to be nicer to the animal control folks. They're not as bad as you think. Most of them love animals. The ones I've met love animals, and that's why they're in the job. But they just are asked to do some of the ugly things. Kind of like the military. Think of it like the military. Military needs people who can kill, but they're not trying to hire stone-cold killers, okay? And so it isn't always their fault either, so be nice to them. That's it. And I'll be around today if you have questions, okay?
Thank you. That was wonderful, Mitch, and for that really in-depth explanation of how it all happens. It is very similar, I think, in lots of places in Australia.